Hi, it's Sam time. Hi, this time today, what we're going to do is have a look at how to do titling and captioning. We're going to look at a couple of different approaches. Now, if you've been watching along in the series, you might have noticed a couple of previous episodes. We talked about using Adobe Rush, and we talked about using Adobe Premiere Pro, and both of these applications, you can do some pretty cool titling inside them. So one of the decisions you have to make before you get going is to work out, do you want to do the titling in those sorts of programs, or should you do it in Character Animator? Well, if you want a really flashy set of titles, it really is worthwhile probably using one of those other applications. But here's a few extra tips and hints just to help you make your decision. So, number one is if you're going to create multiple scenes in your episode, in your character project, and you want the title to span across scenes, it's probably easier to not do the titles inside Character Animator because Premiere Pro, you can just drag it out and make it span multiple scenes. Nice and easy. Another one is if you want to do fancy things like have the text scroll off into the distance like in the old Star Wars movies at the beginning. Well, you can't really do that in something like Character Animator very easily. But it's pretty easy to do in a program like After Effects. So Adobe After Effects can do lots of really clever things. So I would suggest checking out After Effects if you want to do anything particularly fancy. So what we're going to do is look at here is some of the more basic sorts of titling you might want to do. Things that's worthwhile doing inside Character Animator. The advantage I like of doing inside Character Animator is it keeps it all together. But it tends to be within one scene then, and I just limit myself to that. Okay, let's get into it. So, before we get going, I thought I'd just show a couple of files. I've built a couple of files together with some bits of text. Let's have a look at them first. So here is a series title. So this I've done in Adobe Illustrator. I've just put some text on the screen. And you might say, oh, why is it all blue in the background? Well, what you can do up in Document Setup is you can change what the background grid for transparency looks like. So this is some text over a transparent background. I just happen to make this blue just to make the writing stand out a bit better. And we're going to start with this one. But just while I'm here, I've also got another file, another image, and we're going to have a look at this one in a moment too. But this one, I've got a transparent grey background, and the reason is to try and make the text stand out a little bit more clearly. Cool. So let's fire up. I'm just going to get out of the way for the moment, and let's start up Character Animator. Hey, I'm back again. Okay, let's have a look at the Wookie scene. This is the one we had from previous ones. Oh, now I actually moved some files around. So I'm going to come over here and show you a little bit of a trick. What happened is I moved my files just to clean things up, but I did it from outside Character Animator. And so the puppet up here, it's gone orange, and it says, I don't know where the file is. Well, I've moved it down into a subdirectory. So I just click that. We've linked that back up, and the Wookie came back. Yay! Super Wookie! Okay, let's go back to the scene, and we've got our guy. And we just had a very simple scene. Okay, so how do we throw that title on top? Well, you can do a file import. You can also just drag and drop the file on top, but I'm going to do an import. I'm going to import the series title. And so what it's done is, even though the series title is really artwork and text, because it's a picture, it got loaded as got loaded as a puppet as well. So we're just going to drag that down to the scene. Go drag. Now I can drag it above the Wookie or below. I'm going to drag it above. By dragging above, it appears in front. Now I can do some things like adjust the scale. This is over in the properties panel, the transform. I can change the Y value, move it up and down a little bit until I'm happy. And then Wookie's dancing behind the title. Now, if I put the title beneath the Wookie, you can have another sort of fun effect, and I might sort of zoom that right up, and then I've got the Wookie dancing in front of the title. And so the ordering over here affects the depth and what appears in front of what. I'm going to move it up in front just because it's easy to see. So what happens if I want the title to only appear during some of it? Well, you can grab the edge and bring it in. There's a few ways of doing it. This is just one of them. I'm going to zoom out. And if you zoom way, way, way out, you see that this, the series title actually does have an end. It's just way off the edge of the screen. So I'm going to bring that way back down. And then I'm going to zoom back in. And if I do this, the puppet's only active for this shorter period of time. And so during that time, the title appears and then disappears again. So that's one way of doing it, just shorten the length of the puppet. Another way, however, is to do a recording. So we didn't actually have to reduce it like that. We can just bring it back, make it off the edge of the screen or whatever. Another way is to use the opacity. And so we don't need all these other. If you hold down Control and click, it sort of turns them all on and off at the same time. So I'm going to turn them all off, but I'm going to turn on opacity because I want to record a value. I'm going to start with it off. I'm going to set that to 0. By setting it to 0, it's invisible. I'm then going to arm it to say I want to record a new value. And I'm going to record a new value of 100%. If I start recording, here we go, and then I hit Control R again to stop recording. I've now got a little recording. And what's going to happen is, turn that off, at the beginning, the opacity will be 0 because that's the default for the puppet. I changed the puppet in the scene. I overrode the global puppet default for the one in the scene to say 0, but then in this recording, I set the opacity to 100. You can't actually see it over here, unfortunately, but that's what this recording is. I set the capacity to 100. So now I can just drag this around to work out when the title should appear and disappear. But what if I wanted to fade in and fade out? That's where these little corners come in. If there's a little box up in the top corner, and you can drag them in so you get this nice curvy sort of shape. And if you do that, I hit play, it fades in and out. Now I can extend this one out a little bit. The recording wasn't that long. If you notice the little diagonal lines, I don't know if it's very clear, but down the bottom there's a little bit of diagonal lines there. And what that means is it's just taken the last value and dragged that out longer. Well, the last value was 100%, so I can drag this any length I like. And so I can do a longer fade in and gentle fade out. Cool. Well, how do we get a little bit more fancy? Well, what we could also do is if I come back to the start, is I could start another recording, but this time I'm going to enable the title puppet. I'm going to turn off opacity, and I'm going to record a scale and a position. Now, If I turn off that eyeball, by clicking that eyeball over here and turning it off, I just made it possible to see it. It turns off the effect of that transformation. So I can't see it anymore, which means it's just using all the global defaults so it's visible. What that means is if I'm not going to do that after all. I'm going to arm it. I'm going to do I'm going to get rid of this little, just going to make it a little bit easier for the moment. So I've got a little drag at the moment. And then I'm going to scale. Because these values are armed here, when I change this value, it's not changing the timeline default. It's going to change the value when I start recording. It'll record this new value. So I'm going to scale it down and I'm going to move it down. So what I do is I grab it, put the cursor on it, and I drag the mouse around and it moves, even though I go off the edge of the screen. So cool. So I've got it down here and I'm actually going to record that. And Control R again to stop recording. So I just hit Control R to start and stop. And now see it's recorded X, Y, and scale. And I'm just going to drag these out to the same start and end as the other one. And I'm going to put that fade back on. And you might say, oh, okay, what's that going to do? It's appeared down the corner. That's not much use, is it? Well, by selecting all three, I'm clicking and I'm using Shift so I can Shift click. And I'm going to grab that drag so that it goes from almost nothing all the way up there. And I think I got that back to front. So undo, Control Z to undo. I think I want to do it this edge. And so it's going to start from there and it's going to go all the way up to there. Okay, so I'm going to shorten this up so it occurs during and then it's sure it should finish the zoom up. So it should zoom up, be there for a little bit, and then fade back out. So let's have a look. Cool. And as before, I could just drag the Wookie up in front. So you can do a little bit of titling inside Character Animator. Now, it's just not as good as what Premiere Pro can do, but it's still, you can keep it all in the one project. If you've got lots of text, I do find it starts to be a little bit annoying because you've got to create an artwork file for every single piece of text. And so if you're doing lyrics for a song, you'll end up with lots and lots of artwork files to load in. It works, but if you do it in Premiere Pro, you can just create it right on the spot on Premiere Pro in the timeline. You don't need to create separate artwork files for it. Now, the artwork file, you can put anything you like in it. It could be pictures, any font you like, whatever you like. Cool. Now, there's one other one I want to bring up. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to Control I to import. I'm going to import a background. Now, backgrounds, we're going to talk about this in the future, but backgrounds also are just loaded up as a puppet. So I'm going to load it up. I'm going to put it behind everything else. Now, you can use this little triangle thing just to shrink them up. So, hey, there he's in a classroom. I'm just changing the anchor Y point to move it up and down, and it looks a little bit funny. So let's go grab him. Oops, I forgot to click on him. And we're going to change his Y just to make it look like he's standing in the classroom. I'm going to put the series title in front. So what does it look like now? So That's all well and great, but what happens if I had a lot more text and I want to drop it over in front? And so I'm going to load up the other file, which is this one. And I'm going to drag it on top. So what I've done here, I might scale it up a little bit more. I've got it selected in the timeline. And because it's not armed, it's actually changing the default of the puppet there. But what you might notice is I've put a grey background, a transparent grey background, and I put a bit of highlight and stuff on it. And like there's a little bit of a glow sort of effect to make it stand out. But the idea is without that transparent background, without the dark behind it, it just helps the writing stand out a bit. Now, there's other things you could do. You could put black outlines around the characters, and that could also work. But I found with such a small font, it didn't work very well. So it's little tricks like that can just help. Oops, wrong one. Click there. I'm trying Control E to bring it over here. If I hide that, the text is still there. I'm just going to save that. We come back over here. And we come back to our Wookie scene. And you start to see the text is a little bit hard to read.
Here's what I found on the web for what does the word text story.
Somebody decided to jump in. I didn't ask you to do that. Okay, but you see it's a little bit hard to read. So that's the reason why putting the grey background can help. It just makes the text much easier to read, but making it transparent still keeps a little bit of the, you can still see what's going on behind, but still make the text easy to read. Anyway, that's all I think I wanted to get through in this episode. I'm just checking some of my notes. Yeah, I think that's it. Cool. I'm just trying to finish up here. Come back to me. Sorry, I'm just trying to get organized. Too many screens. Cool. I'm back again. So, hopefully you found that useful. There's a few different ways of doing it. Sorry it's a little bit long in spots, but it's for the fun of live streaming. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this episode. As I said, there's a couple of different ways of doing some titling. Just a reminder, if you want to do titling that spans across different scenes, I would do it in Premiere Pro or Adobe Rush. I wouldn't do it in Character Animator. But if within a scene, you can still do some basics without having to worry about these other programs. Till next time, bye.